Anna's life was simple, yet fulfilling. She had a successful career, a loving family, and the kind of future that many only dreamt of. Every morning, she woke up with a sense of purpose, heading to her job with a steady smile on her face. She was confident in her routine, and for her, the world seemed predictable. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Anna was on her way home from work, chatting with a colleague on the phone, laughing about the small victories of the day. The weather was perfect, the sky was clear, and everything felt normal. But in an instant, her world was turned upside down. A truck, speeding through a red light, collided with her car. The impact was catastrophic, throwing her vehicle across the street. The screeching of metal, the shattering of glass, and the overwhelming silence that followed seemed like a dream she couldn't wake up from. Anna felt her body being thrown, as if time itself had slowed down. But the pain was instant and blinding. When she finally opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold pavement, unable to move. The world around her was spinning, and the only sound she could hear was the distant wail of sirens. Her heart raced, but she couldn't breathe. Blood dripped from her head, her legs were unresponsive, and her mind was filled with a fog she couldn't shake. "Stay with me, Anna," a voice called out, but it felt so far away. Her vision blurred, and she tried to speak, but only a faint groan escaped her lips. She could feel her consciousness slipping, the world around her fading into darkness. When Anna awoke again, she was in a hospital room. Machines beeped around her. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled her nose, and there was an intense weight in her chest that she couldn't understand. Her body ached in places she didn't know existed. And the worst part? She couldn't move. Her body felt foreign to her, disconnected, as if it belonged to someone else. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what had happened. The memory of the crash came rushing back in flashes. Bright lights, the sound of crumpling metal, the fear, the helplessness. But nothing prepared her for the doctor's words when he entered the room. "Anna," he began, his voice soft but firm. "You've been in a serious accident. We're doing everything we can to help you, but I need to be honest with you. You've sustained multiple injuries. You may never walk again." Those words, spoken with a calmness that felt surreal, hit Anna like a thunderclap. A cold wave of panic swept over her, and she couldn't find the words to respond. The life she had known was slipping away, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Her eyes welled up with tears as she tried to grasp the gravity of the situation. She was alive, yes, but she didn't feel alive. She felt like a shadow of herself, trapped in a body that no longer functioned the way it once did. For the first time in her life, Anna was terrified. Terrified not just for her physical recovery, but for the life she would have to rebuild. The world that once seemed so certain had shattered in a moment, and now she was left to pick up the pieces. But somewhere, deep within her, there was a flicker of something, a voice in her mind that whispered, "I will not give up." Anna didn't know how, but she knew she had to fight. She had to believe that there was a way out of this darkness, even if it seemed impossible. And so, the journey to recovery began, not just for her body, but for her soul. This was the beginning of a fight she never imagined she would face, a battle that would challenge her in ways she could never have prepared for. But she had no choice. She had to survive. The days that followed Anna's accident blurred together, each one feeling like a never-ending haze of pain and confusion. Her body, once full of life and energy, now felt like a stranger to her. The hospital room was her new world, and the sterile, clinical environment suffocated her. Every sound, every beeping machine reminded her of the fragility of life. Her hands, which once moved with such ease, now lay limp by her sides. The world outside her window seemed far away, as if it had forgotten about her. The first few days after the crash were a whirlwind. Doctors, nurses, and therapists came and went, checking her vitals, assessing her condition, and discussing her prognosis. But it was the conversations she overheard that pierced her like a blade. "She's lucky to be alive," one nurse whispered to another. "But will she walk again?" The other replied, her voice tinged with doubt. Anna couldn't help but overhear these words, and they lodged deep into her heart. She didn't want to believe it, but the uncertainty was suffocating. She tried to move her legs, to will them to respond, but they remained still, unfeeling, like two lifeless weights at the end of her body. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional agony that crept in with each passing hour. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she had lost. The simple pleasures of her old life now seemed so distant. A walk in the park, the joy of running errands, the thrill of a spontaneous night out with friends. All of it was gone, or so it seemed. Her mind kept replaying the crash, the loud screech of tires, the glass shattering, the feeling of being flung through the air, and then the silence. The silence that followed the accident felt like a deep, hollow void. The silence of a life interrupted, of a future that now seemed impossible. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting an orange glow through her hospital window, Anna's mother arrived. She had been with Anna's father, making phone calls to family, arranging support, trying to keep their world together. When Anna saw her mother's face, a familiar warmth flooded her chest. But that warmth quickly turned to guilt as she saw the worry etched into her mother's features. Her mother sat by her bedside, gently holding her hand. "Anna, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You're going to be okay. We're all here for you. We just need to take it one step at a time, okay?" Anna could see the tears welling up in her mother's eyes, and it broke her heart. She didn't want to be the source of her mother's pain, but she couldn't help it. She couldn't stop feeling like she had failed everyone, like she had let them all down by being in this condition. "I'm sorry, Mom," Anna whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I didn't want this. I didn't want to be this way." Her mother leaned in and kissed her forehead, brushing away the tear that escaped Anna's eye. "Sweetheart, you didn't choose this, but we're going to fight this together. You're not alone in this, Anna." The words felt hollow to Anna, but her mother's presence was a comfort, a small flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. The journey ahead was long, and Anna didn't know if she had the strength to face it. She wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness of it all. But instead, she simply closed her eyes and let the silence consume her once again. But that night, as she lay in her bed, the sounds of the machines and the distant chatter of the hospital staff, barely registering. Anna's mind shifted. For the first time, she thought about what it would take to truly recover, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. She had heard the doctor's words, the ones that echoed in her mind, relentlessly. You may never walk again. But deep down, Anna couldn't accept that. She couldn't imagine a life confined to a wheelchair. She couldn't imagine a future without movement, without independence. It wasn't an option. As tears welled up in her eyes once more, Anna made a silent vow to herself. She wasn't going to let this accident define her. She would fight, no matter how long it took. The road ahead was uncertain, and she didn't know where it would lead, but she was determined to find out. Her recovery would not be just about her body, it would be about reclaiming her life. And she would start that journey one small step at a time. Anna's world had become a strange combination of numbness and agony. The physical pain from the accident was unlike anything she had ever known. Every part of her body ached in ways she didn't even know were possible. Her head throbbed, her limbs felt like dead weight, and the constant beeping of machines in the background only added to the overwhelming sense of helplessness. But the worst of it wasn't the pain, it was the feeling of being trapped inside her own body, unable to escape. At first, the doctors had told her that the recovery would be slow, but Anna hadn't fully understood what that meant. They spoke in medical terms, mentioning broken bones, internal injuries, and nerve damage, but all she could hear were the words, "You may never walk again." Those words echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. Every time she tried to move, to stretch her fingers or wiggle her toes, her body remained still. It felt like her spirit was screaming inside, but her body refused to listen. The days dragged on in an agonizing blur. Anna's mind was a battlefield. On one hand, she had a deep desire to get better, to push through the pain and reclaim her independence. On the other, the weight of her new reality crushed her. She could feel herself slipping into despair. The isolation of her hospital room seemed to amplify the darkness in her thoughts. Every time she tried to imagine a future, all she saw was a version of herself confined to a chair, unable to walk, unable to live the life she had once known. Her nights were the hardest. As the lights dimmed in the hospital ward, the silence was deafening. The pain would intensify when the medication wore off, and she was left alone with nothing but her thoughts. Her eyes would sting with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She didn't want to be weak. She didn't want to be pitied. And yet, there were times when the sorrow inside her was so deep that it felt like it would swallow her whole. It was during one of these nights, in the quiet darkness, that Anna heard a soft knock on the door. It was her mother again, as usual, coming to sit with her in the quiet hours. She had always been there, her constant presence, a reminder that Anna wasn't truly alone. Her mother entered the room and sat beside the bed, her hands gently clasped together in her lap. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" her mother asked, her voice filled with concern. Anna could barely look at her. She didn't want to show her weakness, didn't want her mother to see how broken she truly felt. But the pain in her eyes must have been evident because her mother didn't push. She just sat there in silence, letting Anna gather the strength to speak. I feel like I'm drowning, Anna whispered, her voice raw, like there's no way out, no way to get better. Her mother's hand found hers, warm and comforting. You're not drowning, Anna. You're just learning to swim again. It's hard, but I know you can do it. Anna squeezed her mother's hand, but the doubt in her heart refused to leave. Can I really do this? She wondered. The fear of being forever dependent, of losing her independence, clung to her like a shadow. The days passed, and Anna started her physical therapy. Each session felt like a battle. The therapist would gently move her legs, helping her stretch them, trying to stimulate the nerves that had gone dormant. She felt like a puppet, her body not responding as it should. The movements were slow, frustrating, and painful. But what hurt the most wasn't the physical agony. It was the realization that she was no longer in control. One morning, after a particularly grueling session, Anna was left alone in her room for a brief moment. Her body ached, and her mind felt as heavy as lead. She closed her eyes and let out a deep breath, willing herself to find some strength within. I can't give up. I can't be this weak, she thought. But even as she repeated these words in her mind, the reality of her situation felt too overwhelming. She had come to a stark realization. Recovery wasn't just about regaining the use of her body, it was about reclaiming her life piece by piece. But the journey to do so would be long and filled with more pain than she could ever imagine. It wasn't going to be easy. And for the first time, Anna had to accept that. There would be days when the darkness would threaten to swallow her whole, but there would also be moments of light, moments of hope, however small, that would keep her going. Her body may have been broken, but her spirit was not, and somehow she knew that if she held on, if she kept fighting, she would find a way out of the abyss of pain. But it would take everything she had. It would take her courage, her perseverance, and most of all, her belief that she could do it, that she could come out the other side stronger than before. The days blurred into weeks, and Anna's life was slowly but surely being rebuilt from the ground up. What she had once considered mundane, taking a shower by herself, walking to the kitchen for a cup of coffee, or even simply stretching in the morning, now felt like impossible feats. Yet, with every passing day, Anna fought to regain control over her body and her life. Physical therapy had become her new reality. She could no longer rely on the movements and energy she once took for granted. Each session left her exhausted. Each small success felt hard-earned and precious. Her therapist, a kind and patient woman named Rebecca, was relentless. We're going to make progress, Anna. 1 inch at a time, she would say, always encouraging, even when Anna felt like giving up. But Anna's own mind was her toughest challenge. Every time she moved or tried to stretch her legs, she was faced with the undeniable fact that her body wasn't responding the way it once had. It felt like her mind and body were two separate entities, no longer working in unison. The struggle was not just physical, it was mental. Every movement was a reminder of what she had lost, and every time she felt the pain, the deep frustration that came with it. Her thoughts would spiral into doubt. I'll never be the same, Anna would whisper to herself. What if I can't walk again? What if this is my life now, forever stuck in this bed? But her mother's words echoed in her mind. We're in this together, Anna. You're not alone. That was enough to push her through some of the darkest moments. Still, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that the world she had known was slipping further and further away, and she wasn't sure if she could find her place in it again. The weight of her limitations pressed down on her, and it wasn't just the physical aspects of recovery that consumed her. It was the deep-seated fear that she had lost something more precious, her sense of identity. Who was she now? Was she just a survivor of an accident, someone defined by her injuries? She longed for the days when she was known for her skills, her independence, and her strength, not as someone who could barely lift a cup on her own. One evening, after a particularly tough physical therapy session, Anna sat alone in her hospital room, staring out of the window. The world outside seemed to be moving on without her. People walked, ran, and lived their lives with such ease she couldn't help but feel like an outsider, trapped in a life that wasn't hers anymore. Her therapist, Rebecca, knocked softly and entered the room, carrying a bright smile. How are you feeling today? She asked, setting down a fresh glass of water on the bedside table. I'm not sure, Anna replied, her voice sounding weaker than usual. It's like I'm stuck. I don't know how to start again. Rebecca sat down beside her. You don't have to start all over at once, Anna. Recovery is a journey, not a race. And the fact that you're even trying means you're already making progress. Anna looked at her, searching her eyes for any sign of the truth behind those words. I just don't know if I have it in me. Some days, I feel like I don't even recognize myself. Rebecca's expression softened. That's completely normal, Anna. You've been through something that most people will never experience. But what I see is someone who is determined, who is fighting with everything she's got. You may not be able to see it right now, but you're already starting to rebuild. It was as if a flicker of hope had ignited in Anna's chest. She had been so focused on the limitations that she hadn't realized the quiet victories that were accumulating with every day. Even the smallest movements were signs of progress. The fact that she was here, sitting up, speaking, and trying to move, these were victories in themselves. Later that night, as Anna lay in her bed, she closed her eyes and let her mind drift. She thought about the woman she was before the accident, strong, independent, full of confidence. And then she thought about the woman she was becoming. She wasn't the same, but that didn't mean she couldn't be something new, something just as strong, just as resilient. The thought didn't come easily. The fear, the doubt, they were still there. But for the first time, Anna allowed herself to believe that perhaps this was just the beginning. Maybe she wasn't stuck at all. Maybe she was learning how to grow in ways she hadn't imagined before. Her body still ached. She still couldn't walk on her own, and she had no idea how long it would take to get there, if she ever would. But as the moonlight streamed through the window, she made a quiet promise to herself. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her future. She was going to keep moving forward, no matter how small the steps. Anna had been in the hospital for what felt like an eternity. The walls of her room, once unfamiliar and cold, had become a strange comfort, a sanctuary where she could hide from the outside world. The sounds of beeping machines and the scent of antiseptic had become so routine that they no longer bothered her. But the pain, both physical and emotional, never fully left. It was during one of her late night struggles, when sleep refused to take her into its embrace, that Anna found herself thinking back to the moment of the accident. The crushing impact, the dizzying swirl of pain, the helplessness. That moment had felt like the end of her life as she knew it. But as the days dragged on and the weight of her new reality settled in, she began to understand that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the end. She had a choice. She could let the despair swallow her, or she could find a way to fight. The decision wasn't easy. There were still days when the dark thoughts threatened to take over, when the pain seemed like too much to bear. But in the quiet moments, Anna felt something stirring inside her. It was a glimmer of hope, something small but undeniable. It wasn't the same kind of hope she had once had, a hope rooted in the familiar certainty of her old life, but a different kind, a quiet belief that no matter how long it took, she could rebuild herself from the ground up. It was during one of these moments that she met Carla. Carla wasn't a doctor, a nurse, or a therapist. She was another patient, someone who had been through the same grueling process of recovery. Anna met her in the hospital's common area, a small lounge where patients could go to rest and chat. At first, Anna wasn't sure what to make of her. Carla was older than Anna, with a weathered face that spoke of years of struggle. But there was something in her eyes, something fierce and warm, that caught Anna's attention. "Hey," Carla said, sitting down beside Anna, a small smile on her lips. "You're new here, huh?" Anna nodded, surprised by the woman's straightforwardness. "Yeah, just trying to get through this." Carla studied her for a moment, her smile fading slightly as she looked at the physical therapy brace on Anna's leg. "I've been where you are," she said, her voice low and steady. "It's tough, I know, but it's not the end. Trust me, if you want it badly enough, you can make it through this." Anna wasn't sure what to say. She had heard so many encouraging words from doctors, friends, and family, but none of it had truly clicked. But something in Carla's voice, something in the way she spoke, made Anna feel like maybe she wasn't the only one who understood the depth of her struggle. "I don't know if I can," Anna admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day feels like a fight, and I don't know if I can keep fighting." Carla placed a hand on Anna's arm. "That's okay. You don't have to be strong every minute. But if you want to get out of here, you have to keep going, even when you don't want to, even when it hurts. There are days when you'll want to give up. I know, but you've got to keep showing up. That's all you need to do. Keep showing up." Anna looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "Keep showing up," she repeated, softly, as if it was a mantra she could hold on to. For the next few days, Carla became a regular presence in Anna's life. They would sit together, talk about their experiences, and share their fears and triumphs. Carla had been through multiple surgeries after a motorcycle accident and had spent months recovering. But her story wasn't one of tragedy. It was a story of survival, of strength found in unexpected places. And in each conversation, Anna began to see the possibility of her own survival, her own recovery. Carla's journey wasn't just about overcoming physical challenges. It was about fighting through the mental battles that came with being confined to a hospital bed, feeling like an outsider in the life she once knew. Carla had lost her job, her independence, and even the ability to walk for a time. But she hadn't given up. And now, she was sharing the hard-earned wisdom of her experience with Anna. Every step is progress, Carla would say. It doesn't matter if it's a small one. As long as you're moving forward, that's what counts. Anna didn't feel ready to believe it completely, but for the first time in weeks, a small spark of belief began to grow inside her. Maybe she could do this. Maybe recovery wasn't a straight line. Maybe it wasn't about moving forward in leaps and bounds. Maybe it was about learning to accept the small victories along the way. And that was something she could do. As the days passed, Anna's sessions with her physical therapist became more focused. She started to push herself harder, determined to prove to herself that she could take back control of her body. The progress was slow, and there were still days when the pain was unbearable. But Anna found herself thinking back to Carla's words. Keep showing up. It wasn't a promise of instant results. It wasn't the quick fix Anna had hoped for, but it was something she could hold on to. It was a way forward, and for the first time since the accident, that was enough to keep her going. The battle within Anna was just as fierce as the one she fought with her body. Though her physical recovery had started to show signs of progress, the mental and emotional toll of the accident was something she hadn't been prepared for. It wasn't just the pain or the fear of never walking again. It was the relentless battle between hope and despair that raged inside her mind every day. In the quiet moments, when the hospital room was silent, except for the steady beep of the machines and the distant hum of the air conditioner, Anna's thoughts would turn dark. She would replay the crash in her mind over and over, and each time the terror would grip her heart. The sound of the car slamming into hers, the crushing weight of the impact, the feeling of her body being thrown helplessly through the air. It was like she could still feel the shock in her bones. And as the days wore on, those memories seemed to haunt her at all hours. There were moments when she would find herself unable to breathe, trapped in a spiral of panic and fear. What if this was her new life? What if she would never regain her independence? The thought of being confined to a wheelchair, reliant on others for the simplest of tasks, felt like an unbearable weight on her chest. The future seemed so uncertain, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing control. But then, there were moments of clarity, small, fleeting moments when Anna would remember the advice Carla had given her. Keep showing up. Those words had begun to take root in her mind. She didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to know exactly how long it would take or how hard the journey would be. All she had to do was keep fighting, one day at a time, one small step forward. Still, it was hard. Some days, Anna didn't feel strong enough to face the therapy, the physical challenges, or the emotional weight of her reality. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she would ever feel like herself again, wondering if the person she used to be, the confident, independent woman, would ever return. Her thoughts often turned to her family. Her mother, who had been her rock through it all, had been tirelessly supportive. But Anna could see the concern in her mother's eyes. the unspoken fear that maybe her daughter would never be the same. That fear was contagious, and Anna couldn't escape it. One evening, after a particularly exhausting therapy session, Anna found herself alone in her room. The pain in her legs had worsened, and the constant fatigue weighed heavily on her mind. She looked out the window at the setting sun, the sky painted with shades of pink and purple. The beauty of the moment was lost on her. She felt nothing but emptiness. She closed her eyes and let the tears fall, not bothering to hide them. She had been holding so much in for so long, and in that moment, she let herself feel the full weight of everything. But then something unexpected happened. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. She wiped her eyes quickly and sat up, trying to compose herself. Her mother entered, a warm smile on her face, despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "Hi, sweetheart," she said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "How was your therapy today?" Anna shook her head, unable to form the words. She didn't want to admit to her mother just how hard it was. She didn't want to be the one who broke, the one who couldn't keep going. Her mother seemed to understand. She didn't push Anna to talk, but instead she simply took her hand in hers. "I know you're struggling. I see it. And it's okay. You're allowed to have bad days." Anna swallowed hard, trying to fight back the lump in her throat. "I just don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every day feels like I'm fighting against myself. Some days, I feel like I'm losing." Her mother's grip tightened. "You're not losing, Anna. You're just in a fight right now, and it's a tough one. But you're not alone. You don't have to do this by yourself." The words were simple, but they carried a weight of truth that Anna needed to hear. She didn't have to do it all alone. She didn't have to be perfect every day. All she had to do was keep showing up, even on the days when it felt impossible. That night, as Anna lay in bed, she thought about her mother's words. She had been so focused on her limitations, on the ways she had changed since the accident, that she had forgotten how far she had come. Every day she fought was a victory, no matter how small. Every time she showed up for her therapy, even when she didn't want to, it was progress. Anna closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She wasn't going to let her fear control her anymore. She wasn't going to let the darkness inside her win. The road ahead was long, and the battle would continue. But she was beginning to realize that the fight was worth it. She was worth it. Tomorrow, she would show up again. One more step forward. One more day of fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The days felt like weeks, and the weeks stretched into months. Anna's recovery was slow and grueling, but something had changed within her. She was no longer defined by her pain, though it still lingered in the background. It was there, always present, but it no longer consumed her. Each day, Anna fought not just for physical healing, but for the strength to overcome the emotional and psychological barriers she had once feared would trap her forever. Physical therapy had become more intense. Every session tested her body in ways she never imagined possible. Her therapist, Rebecca, had been her steady guide through this journey. With each session, Anna could feel herself getting a little bit stronger, though the journey was far from easy. Her body, once capable of so much, had become foreign to her. Muscles she hadn't used in months screamed with pain as she tried to lift her legs or stretch her arms, but she kept at it, because that was all she could do. keep moving forward, even when the pain seemed too much to bear. At first, the movements had been so small, so insignificant. A flicker of her fingers, a twitch in her foot, and she had celebrated those moments like milestones. The first time she felt her legs move under her own will, the joy she felt was beyond words. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in the world Anna found herself in, that something meant everything. Okay, Anna, Rebecca said one morning as Anna lay on the therapy mat, drenched in sweat. Today, we're going to try something a little different. I want you to try standing up with help, just for a moment. Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had been terrified of this moment, but she knew it was coming. The thought of standing again, of feeling the ground beneath her feet, sent a wave of fear rushing through her. What if she couldn't do it? What if her body betrayed her again, as it had done so many times before? But then she remembered the promise she had made to herself. I will not give up. Rebecca gently helped Anna into a seated position, supporting her back and ensuring she was steady. You're doing great, Anna. Now, slowly, try to push yourself up with my help. Anna's hands trembled as they pressed against the mat. She had to dig deep to find the strength to lift herself. It felt like an eternity before she finally felt her feet make contact with the floor. Her legs shook beneath her, unsteady and weak, but they held her up. She was standing. For the first time in months, she was standing. A rush of emotion overwhelmed her. Fear, relief, pride, but most of all, gratitude. She had come so far from the broken woman she had been when she first arrived at the hospital. She wasn't the same. She wasn't perfect, and she wasn't healed completely, but she was standing, and that was more than she could have ever hoped for. Rebecca smiled at her face beaming with pride. Look at you. You did it, Anna. You're stronger than you know. Anna looked down at her feet, still trembling, but she didn't care. She was standing. She had defied the odds. For the next few weeks, Anna worked tirelessly to regain the strength she had lost. Every day felt like a challenge, but with each challenge, she grew stronger. Her legs no longer shook with every step, and her movements became more fluid. She could walk short distances with the help of a walker, and though it was slow, it was progress. But it wasn't just her physical progress that amazed her. It was her mental and emotional transformation. For the first time since the accident, Anna felt like she was in control of her life again. She wasn't the same person who had once been terrified of losing everything. She had faced the worst and come out the other side stronger. She was no longer a prisoner of her own fear. One evening, after a particularly difficult session, Anna sat alone in her room, gazing out the window at the setting sun. The sky was painted with hues of gold and orange, and for a moment, she felt a sense of peace. It had been so long since she had allowed herself to simply be still, to take in the beauty of the world around her. She had been so focused on the struggle, on the next step, on the next goal, that she had forgotten to enjoy the small moments. Anna closed her eyes and took a deep breath, savoring the simple act of breathing. She had come so far. It wasn't easy, and there were still days when the pain and doubt crept in. But she was stronger than she had ever been before. She wasn't just overcoming her physical limitations. She was overcoming the limitations she had placed on herself. She had learned that recovery wasn't just about regaining what she had lost, it was about discovering who she was becoming. She had faced the darkest moments of her life, and now she was standing in the light. Anna smiled to herself, knowing that the journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more pain, but there would also be more victories, and with each victory, she would grow. She was no longer a victim of her circumstances. She was a survivor, and that made all the difference. Anna's journey had taken a turn she never expected. The woman who had entered the hospital months ago, broken and uncertain, was now emerging from the shadows of her own doubts. Every day brought a new challenge, a new step. But with each step, Anna could feel herself returning to something she thought she had lost forever: her confidence. It had been weeks since she had taken her first steps with the help of a walker, and since then, her progress had been remarkable. Each day, she would push herself a little further. She walked more freely now, without the walker for support. Her muscles, still tender and scarred from the accident, were beginning to regain their strength, and although there were moments of sharp pain, they were no longer insurmountable. She could feel her legs growing stronger, her balance improving, but it wasn't just her body that had changed. Anna's mindset had shifted. When she had first started her recovery, she had been afraid to face the world again, afraid that people would see her as broken or weak, afraid that she would never be able to reclaim the life she had before. But now, those fears seemed smaller, less threatening. She had learned that her worth wasn't tied to her physical appearance or her past abilities. She was more than what had happened to her, more than the accident that had almost destroyed her. Anna was beginning to see herself as someone who could overcome, who could adapt, and who could rise above any obstacle. The fear of what lay ahead had started to dissipate, replaced by a quiet strength she hadn't known she had. That afternoon, she sat in the hospital's common room, watching the other patients as they went through their own struggles. Some were further along in their recovery, others were just beginning their journey. She had seen them all come and go, but today, something felt different. Anna wasn't just a participant in the recovery process. She had become an example for others. Carla, the woman who had been her confidant through so many dark days, sat beside her, watching the patients with her. Carla was now walking with only a slight limp, a testament to her own strength and perseverance. The two women had shared countless hours together, offering each other support, advice, and stories of triumph. But today, it was clear that Anna had become the one who was inspiring. "You know," Carla said, breaking the silence, "I've been watching you, and I have to say, I'm proud of how far you've come. You're not the same woman who walked into this hospital." Anna smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She didn't need the recognition, but hearing it from Carla meant more than words could express. "I don't feel like I'm the same either," Anna replied, her voice soft but steady. "But I think I'm starting to like who I'm becoming." Carla chuckled, her voice full of warmth. "Well, trust me, the world is going to like her, too." Anna let the words sink in. She wasn't just recovering for herself anymore. She was beginning to realize that her recovery was something others could see and learn from. She had always been a strong person, but now she was learning how to be strong in ways she never thought possible. And the more she saw her own strength, the more her confidence grew. Later that week, Anna was invited to speak at a support group meeting for other patients in the hospital. It wasn't something she had ever imagined herself doing, especially not in her current state. She still felt like she had so much more to go through, so much more to achieve before she could truly call herself recovered. But something inside her told her that now was the time to share her story. Standing at the front of the room, Anna looked out at the faces before her, some hopeful, others filled with uncertainty, just like she had been when she first arrived. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and began to speak. At first, I thought my life was over, Anna began, her voice clear but slightly shaky. When the accident happened, I didn't know if I would ever be able to walk again. I didn't know if I would be able to live the life I had before. I didn't know if I could handle the pain, both physically and emotionally. But what I've learned is that recovery is not just about getting your body back. It's about reclaiming your mind, your spirit, and your confidence. She paused for a moment, letting her words settle in. She could see the glimmer of hope in some of their eyes, the quiet understanding in others. Anna's words were simple, but they were real. There are days when it feels like the pain will never end, when it feels like you're never going to be the same. But I'm here to tell you that it's okay to be different. It's okay to take small steps, and it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to do it alone. Anna looked around the room, feeling the weight of her own journey and the strength that had gotten her this far. She wasn't the same person she had been before the accident, but in many ways, she was more than she ever had been. She had learned that confidence wasn't something you were born with. It was something you built, brick by brick, with each small victory. By the time Anna finished speaking, the room was silent, save for the soft sound of people wiping away tears. She didn't need applause, and she didn't need anyone to tell her how brave she was. But the gratitude in their eyes spoke volumes. In that moment, Anna realized that her recovery wasn't just about herself. It was about sharing her strength with others. It was about helping them believe that they too could overcome. As Anna walked back to her room that evening, her heart was full. She had rediscovered something important, the power of confidence, not just in her body, but in her ability to inspire, to connect, and to share her journey. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And for the first time in a long time, she was excited for what the future would bring. Anna wasn't just recovering, she was reborn. Anna had come so far since that day in the hospital when she thought her life was over. The woman she had become was a testament to her resilience, her perseverance, and her unshakable determination. But as with all journeys, there were new challenges that lay ahead, ones that she hadn't fully anticipated. The opportunity came one morning when her physical therapist, Rebecca, handed her a pamphlet. "There's a charity walk coming up in 2 months," Rebecca said, her tone casual but filled with purpose. "It's for people who have survived accidents or injuries, and it's meant to help raise awareness and funds for recovery programs. I think it could be a great goal for you, Anna." Anna stared at the pamphlet, her heart racing. The idea of walking again, truly walking, had once seemed impossible. The thought of participating in a charity walk was a dream she hadn't allowed herself to entertain. After all, how could she, someone still in the process of recovery, even consider the idea of walking such a long distance, surrounded by others who might be more physically capable? Rebecca, sensing Anna's hesitation, smiled and added, "You don't have to do the full walk. We can start with a shorter route. This is about taking that first step. You've already proven to yourself how strong you are. This is just another step forward." The words lingered in Anna's mind as she left the therapy room later that day. Could she really do this? Could she take part in something so significant when she still had so far to go? The doubts started creeping in again, like they always did. What if I can't make it? What if my body gives out? What if I fail? But just as quickly as the doubts came, Anna pushed them aside. She had spent so much of her life letting fear hold her back. Now, she was determined not to let it control her. If she had learned anything in her recovery, it was that she could surprise herself. She had already come so far, and maybe this walk, this challenge, was exactly what she needed to push herself even further. Anna spent the next few weeks preparing. Each day, she practiced walking with more intention. She pushed herself harder, not in the hopes of being perfect, but to prove to herself that she could go beyond what she thought were her limits. She worked with Rebecca, gradually building up her endurance and strength. The road was long and the journey exhausting, but with each day, Anna's confidence grew. One evening, as she was walking laps around the hospital courtyard, she caught a glimpse of Carla sitting on a bench and watching her. Carla had been through her own journey, and though her recovery had been difficult, she was now walking with a slight limp, a symbol of her strength and resilience. Carla waved her over, and Anna joined her on the bench, out of breath but smiling. "You're doing great, Anna," Carla said, her voice steady and calm. "I know this seems like a big challenge, but remember, it's not about how fast you go. It's about how far you've come. Every step you take is a victory. You've already won." Anna smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Carla's words, as always, had a way of cutting through the noise of her doubts and fears. "I don't know if I'm ready," Anna admitted. "It feels like such a huge thing. What if I can't do it?" Carla leaned in slightly, her eyes filled with understanding. "Remember this. You've already done the hardest part. The hard part was getting out of bed every day and fighting. Now, this is just one more step in your journey. If anyone can do it, it's you." Anna's heart skipped a beat at the conviction in Carla's voice. For the first time, she didn't feel like the weight of the challenge was too much to bear. She wasn't walking this path alone. She had people who believed in her, and more importantly, she was beginning to believe in herself again. The day of the charity walk arrived faster than Anna had expected. The morning was crisp and cool, the sky a perfect shade of blue, and the air was filled with anticipation. Anna stood at the starting line, surrounded by other survivors, each one with their own story, their own battle. She felt a knot form in her stomach as she looked at the route ahead. But she reminded herself of everything she had overcome to get to this point. This walk wasn't just a physical challenge. It was a symbol of everything she had worked for, everything she had fought through. Rebecca was by her side, encouraging her every step of the way. and Carla was cheering her on from the sidelines. Anna took a deep breath and began walking. The first few steps felt shaky, and the crowd around her seemed to blur. But with every stride, the fear began to subside. Her legs ached, but they kept moving. Her breath came in shallow gasps, but she kept going. And as the minutes passed, something incredible happened. She began to feel strong. The walk wasn't easy. It tested every ounce of strength she had. But with every step, Anna could feel her confidence rising. She wasn't just walking for herself. She was walking for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't do something, for everyone who had ever been broken and had to rebuild themselves. As she reached the halfway point, something incredible happened. Anna realized she wasn't just walking to finish a race. She was walking to prove to herself that no matter how many setbacks life threw at her, she could keep going. She could overcome. With renewed energy, Anna pushed forward. By the time she reached the finish line, tears were streaming down her face, not from pain, but from the overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment that filled her heart. She had done it. She had faced her greatest challenge and come out the other side stronger. And as she crossed the finish line, surrounded by applause, Anna realized that this wasn't just a victory in her physical journey. It was a victory of the spirit. She had overcome the greatest battle of all, the battle against her own fear. And in doing so, she had rediscovered the true power of her strength. Anna had proven that no matter the odds, she could keep walking, one step at a time. And that was enough. The crowd's applause felt like a distant hum as Anna stood at the finish line of the charity walk. The cheers, the smiles, the claps, they all merged into a single sound, a sound that filled her heart with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Her legs were sore, her breath ragged, but her spirit had never felt stronger. The finish line wasn't just a physical destination. It was the culmination of everything she had fought for: her recovery, her strength, and her belief in herself. Anna stood still for a moment, taking it all in. The path she had walked to get to this point had been long and filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with victories. Victories that were not always visible on the surface, but had been quietly stacking up inside her, layer by layer. With each step she had taken on this walk, she had peeled back a little more of her fear and doubt, and what remained was a woman who had learned the true meaning of resilience. As she walked off the path and into the crowd, her eyes met Carla's, who was waiting with open arms and a wide grin on her face. The two women embraced, and Anna felt a sense of connection that went beyond words. They had both come a long way, and though their journeys had been different, the strength they had found within themselves was the same. "I knew you could do it," Carla said, her voice full of pride. "Look at you. You're unstoppable." Anna smiled, feeling a warmth that went deeper than any physical accomplishment. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You were right all along. Every step was worth it. Even when I didn't think I could keep going, I did. And I'm here." Carla looked at her with knowing eyes. "You were always capable, Anna. You just had to believe in yourself." Anna took a deep breath, feeling the weight of those words settle into her heart. She had spent so much of her life doubting herself, believing that the pain and limitations would define her. But now she realized she had the power to redefine her own story. She wasn't defined by the accident, by the pain, or by the fears that had once consumed her. She was defined by the strength she had shown in the face of it all. She had survived the abyss, and she had risen from it, stronger and more whole than she had ever been before. The next few days were a whirlwind of celebration and reflection. Anna received messages from family, friends, and strangers, all praising her for her strength and bravery. But as she read each message, it wasn't the praise that mattered most to her. It was the quiet knowledge that she had done it for herself. She had crossed the finish line, not because anyone else had expected it of her, but because she had chosen to. Anna spent time reflecting on her journey, the pain, the setbacks, the small victories, and the moments of doubt. But as she sat in the quiet of her room, she realized that it was those very moments that had shaped her. It wasn't the destination that had mattered most. It was the journey itself, the journey of rediscovering her own strength, her own power, and her own will to keep going, no matter the odds. One evening, as she sat by the window, watching the sun set over the horizon, Anna felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The world outside was still, and for the first time in months, she felt at peace with herself. Her body had healed in ways she had never thought possible, but more importantly, her mind and heart had healed too. The darkness of the past was no longer a weight she carried. It was a part of her story, yes, but it no longer defined who she was. She had learned that healing wasn't a linear path. It wasn't about reaching some perfect endpoint. It was about growth, about accepting the moments of struggle and learning to find strength in them. It was about being kind to herself, about acknowledging her fears without letting them control her, and about taking one step at a time, even when it felt impossible. Anna stood up and walked to the window, her legs strong beneath her. She was no longer the woman who had felt trapped by her own limitations. She was no longer the woman who had feared the unknown. She was a survivor, a warrior, a woman who had faced the darkest moments of her life and had emerged victorious. And as she looked out at the world before her, Anna knew that the journey wasn't over. It would never truly be over. There would always be new challenges, new obstacles, and new fears to face. But she also knew that she had everything she needed to face them, because she had already overcome the greatest battle of all, the battle against herself. Anna smiled, her heart light with the knowledge that she was ready for whatever came next. She had walked through the abyss, and now she was standing in the light. The future was wide open, and it was hers to claim.